Happy Tuesday, Creative Director Kim Kesti here. So happy to be here with you on another Tuesday for our tools, tips, and techniques. We call that T3, and we're so happy to be here, as we always are every Tuesday. So it's all about techniques today. Well, I'm going to be using a tool too. So maybe it's all three, maybe it's all of the above. Let's take a look at the product we're going to be using in today's T3. We are going to be talking all about embossing. So I have my embossing tray here. I have some couple of powders, and I have a background stamp. So it's mainly going to be about embossing that background stamp. Really letting the background do the work, letting the stamp do the work, really having that all come together on your project, but in a really easy way. It is not difficult. I kind of laughed because I had one of my friends the other day ask me, what is heat embossing like? How does that exactly work? And she's a crafter, granted, not necessarily a paper crafter, but I thought to myself, maybe there's more of her out there that don't even really know what heat embossing is all about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as I go through this project. All right, so tip number one that I'm going to start with. We're going to be doing embossing on a darker background. This is our Blue Lagoon cardstock. So in order to get the anti-static off of this paper, or I should say to get the static off of this paper, I'm going to use one of our really fun little tools here. And this is the Soft Tool Sponge. And this is our colorless blender. So it's one of our pan pastels, but as the label says, it doesn't have any color. So we're going to take the lid off of this, and I'm just using the sponge. And I'm just going to go over this paper, and what's that going to do is going to break the static, which is kind of dry here in Arizona. I don't know if it always is where you are, but you're going to go ahead and rub this down. It almost looks like there's a tiny bit of powder, but it really doesn't show, and you can always flip the sponge over and just kind of brush it off. And again, if there is any powder left over, whoa, my camera's like, I need to focus, I need to focus. Sorry, camera. It likes to focus on that little dot right there. So you can go ahead and just brush off the excess, and if there's any of this powder ever showing on your project, you can just take a plain white eraser and erase it. So no worries there. All right, so now we have our paper prepped up. That's tip number one. Now I'm going to take my large block. And this particular stamp, did you all see which stamp I'm using? It's called Deco Wall. So fun. It's got all these great scallops and a lot of detail in this stamp that's really going to show when we do the embossing. Now I'm taking my clear pigment ink, and I'm just going to go ahead and ink up this whole background stamp. The stamps are really generous size. They're actually as big or a little bit bigger than your typical background of your card. So I love that this is really going to go over my entire background. So I want to make sure there's plenty of ink on there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and stamp it. You could, if you didn't like the weight of this block, because this is a pretty hefty little block, you could put your paper on top and then take like a piece of copy paper and press it, but I am going to go ahead and stamp it the traditional way. And I'll try not to drop my block when I do it. So I want to just make sure it's covered all the way. And then just nice, firm, even pressure all across the block. Our stamps do have that cling foam attached to them. I'll show that when I lift the stamp up. So you do have a little bit of that foam that's going to help give you the really nice, even pressure. Okay, make sure I've got it all. And the clear pigment ink is kind of sticky, so typically your paper will stick just a little bit. But check it out, it's so cool. It's actually a really pretty pattern already. Let me just show you that foam on here real quick. So this is the red rubber of the stamp, and then see, it's got this nice foam padding on there. So you're already going to get that nice give on your stamp. Clear stamps don't often have that extra cling foam, so that's one, I think, advantage of our red rubber stamps. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my media tray, which I showed you earlier. This tray normally has two dividers in it, but they're removable, so they come right out. And I'm just going to put my card panel in there. This is going to catch all of my excess embossing powder. So for this particular card, I'm going to use silver powder. I think the silver will be so pretty with this Blue Lagoon. And then I just do the good old sprinkle action. I could probably even end up dumping basically my whole jar on here. Just be generous. You want to just make sure all of your ink is covered. Kind of shake it around in the tray a little bit. Make sure all of the ink is firmly sticking to that powder. Or I should say the powder sticking to the ink, right? So look at that. Just by wiggling it around, I have really good coverage. I know that everything's covered on my image. Carefully try to take it by the edges so I don't, you know, smudge any of the ink. And then you can just kind of tap it down a little bit. All right. Oh, let go. I think I did have one little smudge at the top. Did I? Can't really tell. Okay, there we go. Now I can just use this tray, obviously, and I can take the little end off of it right here and then dump all my powder down, and then it'll go right back into my container. So that's super cool. All right, so I'm gonna get my heat tool out. So here comes the tool in our tips, tools, and techniques. This is our Journey heat gun, our lovely green color that matches all of our tools. And it's a really good heat gun. It does have an automatic heat shut off. So if you're using it for a long time, we had one of our customers call in and say, oh my gosh, the heat gun broke, it's quit working. And we said, you know what? If you've used it a lot for maybe multiple cards you're doing, it has an automatic shut off if it gets too hot. So just let it cool off, plug it back in, and it'll start working. And she emailed back and said, what do you know? Sure is. And I do kind of like to warm this up just for a few seconds so I can get up to temperature. But then you're basically just going to come along, and I probably won't emboss this whole thing, but I do want to show you the magic of when that embossing powder melts. It's got some plastics in there that create the powder along with the metallic. And when those two melt and blend together, magic happens. So we went from a really dull, dark silver to this really gorgeous, bright metallic silver. I'll do one more pass so you guys can see. So you see the magic of, and I'm holding it fairly close. You can see that I'm pretty close to the paper, but you don't want to touch it. And just take your time and go slow and go across the entire surface of your project. And you continue on and on and on and on. And I will finish that off camera in just a minute, so you guys don't have to just fall asleep watching me do all the embossing. But in order to finish this project, I used one of our wedding stamps. And this one is just a beauty. It's called Happy Wedding Day, and it's got 3 sentiments plus the word love, all of which are perfect for weddings. I thought both of the projects I did today would be fun to do for wedding cards because 'tis the season. There's a lot of weddings coming up, and I think particularly here in Arizona because it's so beautiful in the spring. A lot of people get married now in the spring, and maybe they taper off when July and August come. That might be good months for other parts of the country, but I went ahead and used this to finish off my sentiment for the card. And check this guy out. I really did not do much to the sentiment besides stamp it in the same color cardstock, so that's the same Blue Lagoon, and I use the same silver embossing powder. So it really creates a cohesive look for the entire card. But isn't it pretty? Isn't that shine just gorgeous? And then one simple little bow. This is our Riverstone satin ribbon and a couple of our little sequins. There's actually only 3 sequins on there. It didn't need much because it's so sparkly and pretty already. So isn't that simple? I mean, talk about a stunning card with just really one stamp and one stamped sentiment. So nice. So I'm going to leave this handy because I'm going to use this again. But since I was on a roll with the embossing with the metallics, I thought, ooh, I got to try gold too. So I'm going to quickly walk you through how I did the gold one. This time I'm using Flower Tangle stamp set, which is one of my favorites. This stamp set, honestly, I can stamp it in white. I can stamp it in any color and even black, color it. I can stamp it in white, leave it. I can heat emboss it with white powder and watercolor it. In this case, I've started to do the embossing with the gold, and maybe I'll do just a little bit more so you can see. So see how I've got half of it shiny and gorgeous, and the other half is still the dull powder. I'll just heat a little bit more so you can see it. Try to angle it a little bit. Oh yeah, you can see when the powder starts melting. From dull to shiny. So pretty. it's just fun to watch. It's one of those magical crafting moments that I never get tired of. Okay, so I think you definitely have the idea for that. I should show you the die set I used to finish this card too. So let me show you the finished card first. Here's my Happy Wedding Day card. Isn't it stunning? So for this card base, instead of using white like the first card, I used our brush gold cardstock, which I think is the perfect complement. So pretty. Now the die I used, because Fun Stepper's Journey does not have rectangles quite this small, so I reached into my Spellbinders stash, and this is one of the basic rectangles. In fact, it's called Scored and Pierced Rectangles. That's pretty basic. And it goes all the way down to these itty bitty rectangles, which I just love. So that's the set that I used for wrapping around my sentiment. I thought it was just really a cute size. And I love that the outside rectangle has that slight embossing too. I don't know if we can zoom in there, Roy, real quick and see if we can get that great embossing on the, oh yeah, there we go, on the rectangle. Isn't that fun? So every other one pierces and every other one embosses that fun little rectangle. So that's a great die to add to your stash. All right, so let's bring the silver one back and we can have a fun little silver and gold party here. So there's our silver version and our gold version. Two awesome wedding cards that would be great to add to my stash. I need even more than two, but I think this will give me a good start. So I hope you consider using your background stamps, and really, guys, let them do the work for you. No matter which stamp, we have so many amazing background stamps in our selection. Just grab any one of them, little bit of embossing powder, maybe try our rose gold or our copper powders. Just stamp, emboss, and let them do the work. I think you'll really have fun. Okay, so definitely tune in next Tuesday. We'll be here every week, as always, to bring you fresh tools, fresh tips and techniques, and we will use tools. All the T's, definitely. In the meantime, you have a great time bringing paper to life.